And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Thursday, January 30th. Can't believe it's January 30th already. I'm Josh Engleman here to break down a 5-game NBA slate for today. 7 o'clock, a 7:30, a 9, a 9:30, and a 10. This is a great slate for late swaps. We'll see where we end up with the news. Before we get started, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It was a good night for Jalen Brunson. A good night, sorta, for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, other than the fact that OKC dropped that game last night. Kristaps Porzingis with a monster. Durant, exceptional. Ant, exceptional. PJ Washington, exceptional. Zoo, exceptional. Big day. A lot of scoring yesterday. The crazy one. Value, on the other hand, little different. Little different. Hope you had Keon Johnson. Gonna go ahead and assume that nobody really had that. Brooklyn, Charlotte, awful. Absolutely awful. Nikola Jokic, 40 fantasy points, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. That right there is a floor game. Jalen Tyson, 15.75 fantasy points. Got outscored by Craig Porter Jr. Ty Jerome, 36.5. Not bad. Not bad. Dallas, 137-136 dub over the Pels. 57.5 out of PJ Washington. 50 out of Daniel Gafford. Big old days, man. Big old days. But now we're here. We got 5 games ahead of us. A lot of question marks going on this slate today. Gonna be tricky to talk about some of it. Cavs on the back-to-back. Wizards on the back-to-back. Timberwolves on a back-to-back. Lots of Q tags in other places. Steven, why did I sentence Jokic to 42? What did I say? How'd I do that? I wasn't that heavy on him. I mean, like, obviously he's Jokic, but I didn't think I had, like, a big Jokic stand. Yikes. Not ideal. Today's wild. Lots of ownership coming into Cleveland and Washington, Minnesota, and the Lakers. Barely any coming into Utah. No surprise. Very light on Orlando and Portland. Okay, just making sure. Yeah, Josh Okogie, floor game too. Jokic having 2 fouls in the first 90 seconds really shouldn't have mattered. I don't know what Michael Malone was doing there, but I mean, he still got to 33.5. So I guess it didn't matter, but I don't know why he sat him as long as he did. Weird. Lost by 10. Only lost the Jokic minutes by 3. Never fails. Never fails. Let's get into it, guys. Let's talk some basketball. Because we've got a slate ahead of us here, and we've got a little over a week until the trade deadline. So it's going to be fun. We're going to start it off with the Los Angeles Lakers. They are 7.5-point favorites in Washington. 224 total. Now, the Wizards are on a back-to-back. The Lakers, on the other hand, are already without Anthony Davis. He's just out. We're not waiting on this one. So no AD. Q-tag Dorian Finney-Smith. Q-tag LeBron. Q-tag Gabe Vincent. Rui Hachimura is probable for this one. So as of right now, we are getting 25% ownership to Austin Reeves at 8,500. We're getting 60% ownership to LeBron James, 10,500. Do I think it's going to be 60 all day? No. Is he going to be one of the higher owned guys all day? Yes, he is. And then Max Christie's getting a little bit of love at about 15%. But Jackson Hayes only at 5. That is for sure going to come up, at least I think. The expectation for me is going to be that Jackson Hayes starts in Anthony Davis's place. We got a small amount of ownership coming into Rui Hachimura as well. But let's talk through LeBron. Obviously, with no AD, he looks way different. Usage rate goes up, rebounding can go up. Just going to be more involved naturally when you take the second best player on the team off the floor. Now, I only had him 16% optimal, 38% boom, but 38% chance of 56 fantasy points. LeBron looks awesome. Clearly one of the premier, if not the premier, pay-up options on the day without Anthony Davis being in for this spot. Not to mention, they just get to face the Wizards. And the Wizards are dreadful. So, right out of the gate, it becomes very apparent that like everything is on LeBron's side. No second star. Just not in the game today. Solid enough price, position works, small-ish slate, and then you get to face the Wizards, arguably the worst defensive team in the league. What more could you want here? He looks so good. He looks so good. Now, Reeves, to me, 25% owned feels a little high. Nothing crazy. 20 makes a little bit more sense to me, but nothing out of the realm. He obviously improves as well without LeBron or without Anthony Davis being in. Getting 10 to 15% of Max Christie makes a ton of sense. Great positional flexibility as well. I'm a little more interested in Jackson Hayes than the field is, but I think that ownership comes up to that like 10 to 15% range. And then, Rui, totally fine. The status of Dorian Finney-Smith will be really important for Rui. Rui will look a lot better if Dorian Finney-Smith happens to be out. Because then you're going to get 30 minutes out of Rui, and he'll project pretty well at 4,900. Gabe Vincent's status probably doesn't matter all that much. Like, you need a lot of minutes out of him because he's such a bad per-minute guy. If he's out, you increase your minutes to Shake Milton and Dalton Connect. I don't think that really creates anything. So really what we need, and obviously the biggest piece of news here is the questionable tag on LeBron. If LeBron happens to sit this game, then we're going to like a lot of things on the Lakers because nobody's left at that point. We're going to create a ton of value. Whether that's Shake Milton or Dalton Connect or Cam Reddish or whatever ends up popping, something will. Rui, obviously. Reeves, obviously. So we've got 83 minutes right now that are questionable for the Lakers side, but LeBron, very clearly a huge priority today. Jackson Hayes looks good. Austin Reeves and Max Christie both look pretty damn good. Fun spot, though, for the Lakers, man, especially with no AD. It's a really fun spot. What do I have the base pace set to? I feel like I'm off on that. No, I'm right. 99. Reddish is scared to shoot the ball. That's because he's bad at shooting the ball. My guess. But yeah, that's what we've got for the Lakers right now. We really need the news. Because if LeBron ends up out, everything breaks down and everything is crazy for the Lakers. At least it's a 7 o'clock start, so we should know if that happens. But yeah, I'm assuming we get Jackson Hayes starting, playing the large majority of the center minutes. Christian Koloko backing him up, playing, the large majority of the backup run. I don't find Koloko to be all that interesting. He would have to start for us to care. But whoever starts at center for the Lakers should at least look decent. Now, unfortunately for us, we have a lot of ownership coming into the Wizards as well. And we have no idea who's going to be playing for the Wizards today. I think we could assume that Malcolm Brogdon isn't. But we definitely don't know the status of Alex Sarr. Sarr missed the front end of the back-to-back yesterday. I have him in for right now. And we're getting a ton of ownership to Washington, even in a pretty sizable pace down spot. We've got Jordan Poole at 30%. We've got Bilal Coulibaly at 20. We've got Kyle Kuzma, Keyshawn George, both at 10. We've got Alex Sarr and Joval, both at 15. And then we've got Bub Carrington at 30. Now, I've got some disagreements and some wiggle room here on some of these Washington Wizards guys. Yes, they look good. I don't think they look overwhelmingly good. I think pretty clearly Jordan Poole is my preferred option. 6,900, point guard only. I got him 23% optimal, 40% boom. When they're in competitive matchups, Poole's getting real playing time. And his target score at 6,900 for this size slate is 39.5. I mean, the Lakers defense isn't particularly good to begin with. It's a lot worse when Anthony Davis isn't around. So this is actually a decent spot for the Wizards, other than the fact that it'll be a lot slower. But Jordan Poole will be my priority coming out of Washington today. I've been pretty high on him as of late. That's not changing for today. I do think Bub Carrington looks like the second best option. 12% optimal, 21% boom, 25 fantasy point target score. 30% ownership seems a little lofty. He is 3,700. He's point guard, shooting guard eligible, so the flexibility is great. But I'm assuming he comes down to that 20% range, kind of where Bilal Coulibaly is. And Coulibaly seems about right at 20. Kyle Kuzma seems about right in that 10 to 15 range. Keyshawn George feels right at 10%. If Sarr is in, he'll just be 15% owned probably. He kind of just always is. And I think that'll be the right amount of Sarr. I mean, if Sarr is in, then Joval is not a thing. If Sarr is out, then we're going to a starting Joval, and we'll project him for 24, 25 minutes like we get in his starts, and he'll project pretty damn well. If we give him 24 minutes at his current rate, that's 32.16 fantasy points at 5,700, 5.6x the salary. Yeah, he'll be 35% owned. And we'll be going right back to Joval like we did yesterday. But it all depends on the status of Sarr. If I'm ranking the Washington Wizards, Jordan Poole is very clearly 1 for me. Bub Carrington would be 2. Kyle Kuzma would be 3. Bilal Coulibaly would be 4. Alex Sarr would be number 5. But that Sarr news is huge. If he ends up out, then we're doing the Joval experience all over again, same as yesterday. We have to. And then, honestly, on a day like today with only 5 games, if Sarr is out and we get Joval starting, Rashawn Holmes off the bench at the flat 3K behind Joval will be a value play that we can go to. Not that he'll be heavily owned, but 18 minutes or so of Holmes at 0.9 fantasy points, 16.2, a 3K is 5.4x. Yeah, he'll be like a 10%er. I know nobody's going to want to do the Joval experience again today, but we're going to have to do it if Sarr ends up out. But prioritize Jordan Poole, everybody. Why not? Game number 2, the Atlanta Hawks. 10-point dogs in Cleveland, 236 total. So Atlanta has no Bogdan Bogdanovic, which... What happened? Do we know the news? Personal reasons. Okay. Interesting. So Bogdan out. Clint Capella out. Jalen Johnson out for the year, unfortunately. Trae Young probable. Now we are getting basically 0 ownership to Atlanta, even with all those dudes out. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that this is a terrible matchup for the Hawks. Pace down spot against Cleveland. Although it is the second fastest game and the second highest total, it's not a great spot for Atlanta, personally, because they have to face Cleveland and Cleveland's really good defense. So, as I'm looking at it right now, we have basically no ownership to Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Vit Krejci. We got about 10% to DeAndre Hunter and about 15% to Onyeka Okongwu. I think these guys are massively underowned. I think Trae Young, I have 15% optimal, 53% target score. I think he should be 15% owned. Massive underowned here. I think Dyson Daniels is underowned at 3%. I think Vit Krejci is under owned at 3%. I think all of those guys should be at least 10, if not 15% owned. So I see a lot of leverage on the Atlanta side. And I think the Hunter and Okongwu ownership is about right. I don't have anything really that I want to add there. Last time out for Atlanta, you actually got Mohamed Gay getting the start. Maybe that happens here against Cleveland. Maybe not. Based on the way that they ran their rotations, it's not going to be all that important to do it. And he's not going to get like big minutes if he does it. He's up to 3,900, so he's not going to be much of a worry. Like a 5% guy, assuming that he starts. But I don't see him as anything super interesting. I'd be just as likely to get to Risachet at 4,100. Just slightly better positionality. And like after that, you're not going to Keaton Wallace or Garrison Matthews or anything like that. So if I'm ranking Atlanta, it's Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Vit Krejci, DeAndre Hunter, Onyeka Okongwu. That's like the reverse order of their current ownership. It's kind of weird. But Young, Daniels, Krejci, these guys are under-owned. These guys are tournament pivots right now. Trell asked if we're getting the trade deadline show. Absolutely. It's my favorite thing that I do every year. Muhammad says Atlanta tank season activated. They can't really tank. So they're not going to matter. Steven, I don't expect Nance to play. If he does, he's kind of just like taking the Muhammad Gay minutes. But yeah, we're not going. I don't think you can go to Nance. Yeah, Atlanta's in no position to tank. They won't tank. Like maybe they shut down Trae Young so they don't get him hurt, but like they're not in a race to the bottom. They have no incentive to do so. They don't get their pick no matter what. So, yeah, that won't be happening. And no one's ever catching Washington, Utah, New Orleans, Charlotte, Brooklyn, or Toronto, or Portland. So there's only so far you could even fall. But they don't even have the incentive to fall. Play Trae Young, everybody. Gotta play Trae Young. Yeah, Spurs are going to win the lottery, and they're going to be pairing Cooper Flagg with Wemby. Spurs are going to have 2 bites at that number 1 apple. They're going to get something good in there today or this year, it seems. Brooklyn has 4 first-round picks right now. That's insane. All right, let's go to the Cleveland side. Now, we have no idea who's going to be playing for Cleveland today. They have been walking wounded as of late. Darius Garland sat yesterday for rest. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Donovan Mitchell does it today. Sam Merrill missed yesterday. Dean Wade is already out. Okoro is out. Karis LeVert is out. So we don't totally know what we're getting from Cleveland. We are getting a ton of ownership. Ty Jerome currently projected for 50. That's too high, at least at this moment. But that could come down if Donovan Mitchell ends up out. But we're getting like 20% ownership to Mitchell, Garland, Allen, Mobley, 10 to Niang and Tyson, 30 to Max Strus. No team has more ownership at this moment than the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that makes sense. Atlanta's defense isn't very good. They're walking wounded as well. All of these Cleveland guys look awesome. They should be getting ownership. Great optimal rates and boom rates out of this entire starting lineup. But I have a feeling it's going to change. I just don't know how it's going to change. Does Evan Mobley play the back-to-back? Does Mitchell play the back-to-back? Is Merrill back? We assume Darius Garland is playing. Do we get LeVert or Okoro back? I don't think so. I think Darius Garland is pretty clearly the best option. 7,600, point guard only. They probably, if Mitchell plays, Dyson Daniels is probably getting that matchup. Not that it doesn't like rotate around in modern basketball, but still. Garland is as good, if not the same per minute guy as Mitchell, but he's $800 cheaper. He's just easier to get to. So Garland would be my priority. Max Strus would be 2. Just great flexibility at 4,500. Shooting guard, small forward. Minutes will be there if any of these guys end up out, which will be very helpful. I don't even have him with crazy minutes right now based on this game script and the injury news. Jared Allen, certainly a 20% guy. Evan Mobley looks like a 15 to 20% guy. Ty Jerome looks like a great value and will probably have more minutes than what I have him projected for right now. He played 30 last night with no Garland, no Merrill. You know, if we get no Merrill again, you're still giving Jerome like 24 and he's one of the better value plays. And if we get anything else, it's even bigger. I think George Niang on a day like today is a completely reasonable value option at 3,700, small forward, power forward eligible. I think we have to at least explore the idea of what Jalen Tyson can be, depending on the news here, because he's still the flat 3K, small forward eligible. Like, there's going to be ownership there, depending on the status of some of these guys. As of right now, if I have everybody in outside of that Levert, Okoro, Wade group, who I think is just out no matter what, I'm ranking Cleveland Garland, Strus, Allen, Mitchell, Jerome, Mobley, and then like Niang and Tyson. But my expectation is that something additional is sitting for Cleveland. At least one something. Just feels like the more likely scenario. But we'll find that out later. We'll get injury reports. We'll get updates. I think we'll know this information at a later time today. Game number 3, the Minnesota Timberwolves are 7.5 point favorites in Utah, 224 total. Second lowest pace game on the slate. Now, there is no ownership going to Utah. There is a lot of ownership coming to Minnesota. And we don't know what Minnesota's doing because they're on a back-to-back. Do we get Mike Conley on this back-to-back? Interesting question with no Dante DiVincenzo. We don't know that yet. Do we get Naz Reid for today, who missed yesterday's game with an illness? We don't know. So, a little bit up in the air for Minnesota. I've got everybody in, but be prepared to find out that one or two of these guys might not be in today. We're getting 10% ownership to Ant, 10% ownership to Naz Reid, 15 to 20 on Mike Conley, Julius Randle, and Jaden McDaniels, 40 to Rudy Gobert, and then another 10 to Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And honestly, today, at 3,200, 5-game slate, you crazies might actually be able to play Rob Dillingham for once. I know you're going to look for it. But, oh boy, does Minnesota look good here against Utah. Obviously, revenge narrative alert for Rudy Gobert. He also looks great at 5,600. You know, he plays about 32 minutes every single night. He'll look even better from like a minutes perspective, or you'll feel better about his minutes for sure if Reed ends up out, but he's still a fantasy point per minute guy. I got him 17% optimal, 39% chance of 33.5 fantasy points. I am not surprised at all to see Rudy Gobert grabbing this much ownership. I do expect it to come down a hair later today, and we could really see it change if somebody like Alex Sarr ends up out. I think the best option on Minnesota is probably Jaden McDaniels. He's playing massive minutes right now, basically 35 a night. He's 5,500. He's small forward only. He's not a bad per minute guy, somewhere in that 0.8 to 0.85 range. He has my highest optimal rate. His boom score is only 33. He's only 20% owned. I would argue that he's a bit under-owned. So it's Jaden McDaniels time for me for Minnesota, but Ant looks great as a 10 to 15% owned guy. Randall looks great as a 15 to 20% owned guy. I would argue Naz Reid is under-owned right now, but with the questionable expectation, we don't really know for sure. So if he's in, though, 5,500, power forward center, 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy, good enough positional eligibility with power forward center, I would happily get 20% of Naz Reid. If Conley's in, it's 15 to 20 for sure. He's played 30 minutes in 3 out of the last 4. We have no idea what he's going to do in a back-to-back. Maybe this is a spot where we get more Rob Dillingham. I don't know. If Naz Reid happens to be in, then I don't think we're going to get to too much of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think you'd be in that like 10% range. If Naz Reid happens to be out, then I think you start projecting Nickeil Alexander-Walker for like 24, 25, 26 minutes. At that point, he's going to become a really nice value play. Perfect positional eligibility at shooting guard, small forward. He's 3,400. He would end up being a 20 to 30% owned guy, at least, if we happen to get Naz Reid out at that point. And if he is out, we'll likely see some additional minutes for either Josh Minott or Jalen Clark or Luka Garza. This would probably be a pretty good spot for Luka Garza up against a Utah team that isn't very good. Could probably get away with it there. Or, they could go a completely different direction if they want to and, use like Julius Randle if need be. The potential Minnesota news is going to be very important. Does Reed play? Does Conley play? Is there any other news? Because we're going to want to know that kind of stuff. Surprisingly, matchups against Utah, very viable. You know what isn't viable? The 6% owned in total Utah Jazz. And the Jazz are the same nonsense they always are. John Collins questionable. Walker Kessler questionable. Johnny Juzang is questionable for this one. Who the hell knows? No one got more than 2% ownership. You could tell me that like Markkanen should be 5 and Kessler should be 5 and Isaiah Collier should be 5. I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't roster Utah. It's a pace down spot for the Jazz. They're going up against a really good defense. They're already not very good to begin with. And their prices are honestly a little bit higher than this team's prices should be. Like $7,400 Colin Sexton is a lot of Colin Sexton. $7,100 Walker Kessler. I mean, we don't even know if he's ever playing. How is he still $7,100? So the Utah Jazz are, for all intents and purposes, a cross-off. Just not a team we're looking at today. I have nothing to add. Now, if Walker Kessler and John Collins both end up out, then we're probably going to have a little bit of the Drew Eubanks at center experience. Micah Potter likely looks a little bit better, but he is dreadful on a per minute basis. I don't think any of this really matters all that much. No one's going there. No one should. Lowest optimal. Only team that didn't get to 100% total boom. They only got to 98. They're bad across the board, and we should be ignoring the Utah Jazz as much as we possibly can. Minnesota looks great. Utah does not. All right, schedule for the rest of today. Here is what we've got. The NHL Strategy Show will be at 2 p.m. I am not on anything tonight. I am officially done on Thursdays. We are now going to be taking Keith to puppy classes Thursday nights. So you don't get me at all tonight. You get Greg and Laffy on what you guys remember as the deeper dive. It's going to have a little bit of a different look today. These guys are going to do some portfolio EV and betting. They're going to do some contests against each other. I wouldn't be surprised if they give up maybe a free pass or two to the portfolio EV tool. You're going to get Greg and Laffy tonight. Deeper dive, breaking down some sports betting stuff. Then you're going to get Eric and Bellman tonight for Live Before Lock at 6 o'clock. So half hour replacement deeper dive with Greg and Laffy. Live Before Lock for the full hour for Eric and Bellman. John C., he actually hasn't. He's been really good lately. He hasn't been acting up at all. He's in the crate right now. He's not really making any noise. For the most part, he's like being good about going outside, but we just got to get him trained. He's got to know how to sit and walk on a leash and be around other dogs and stuff. So today's the first day of training. Now, I mentioned that the deeper dive is going to be more portfolio, EV, and sports betting related. Maybe you guys want to grab the tool. You guys can see the banner at the top of the screen. First week free. If you've never used Portfolio EV and the OddsShopper.com tool, you can get it for no cost whatsoever, as long as you click the link in the description. We take a market-based approach to beating sportsbooks and pick'em sites. We give you expected value and expected win rate on all of the props. We have parlay builders, odds boost calculators, mass betting to just immediately populate your card. You can get one-click 6-pick cards on Prize Picks if you want. We've got all the odds shopping for multiple books, all the advanced data that you could want to look at. I highly recommend checking it out. There's even more than what I'm mentioning, but it won't cost you anything. Check it out. It's totally free. If you've never signed up before, click that link. You'll get a free week. You can understand what they're talking about. Greg and Lofty are going to do a great job showing you guys what I'm talking about. Jake, no, Keith is not a humper. Not at all. Apparently, he's just not like his dad, you know? The Houston Rockets are 4.5-point dogs at the Memphis Grizzlies, 238 total. This is the highest total of the slate. This is the highest pace of the slate. And it is very clearly the best basketball game on today's slate. Houston has a Q tag on Steven Adams and a Q tag on Alperen Sengun. So we've got 15% ownership to Amin Thompson, 10 to Van Vliet, 10 to Cam Whitmore, and single digits to everybody else. Now, I think some of these guys are pretty massively under-owned. However, if Sengun happens to not play, maybe we get starting Steven Adams, but maybe he doesn't play. Possible we get starting Jeff Green today against Memphis, playing way more minutes than you would expect. He would become an interesting value. That would likely make Tari Eason look more interesting, and Jayshawn Tate as a value option. So we need the news on Sengun and Adams. If it's just Adams out, then it doesn't matter. If Sengun is out, it really matters. But if he's in, he's only 7% owned, and I have him as the most optimal play on Houston. 9K center only, 18% optimal, 42% chance of 49 fantasy points. I want to get Alperen Sengun if he is in for today. I think Fred Van Vliet should be more owned than 10%, something in that 15 to 20 range. I think Amin Thompson makes sense at 15. I think Jalen Green should be 10 plus. I think Dillon Brooks should be 10 plus. I agree that Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore should both be around 10. I like this Memphis side, or this Houston side, because while it is a bad matchup going up against Memphis's defense, this is a massive pace up spot for the Memphis Grizzlies, or for the Houston Rockets. Man, I keep flip-flopping that. That's getting really annoying. Memphis is the fastest team in the league by a mile, too. Just ultra fast. Houston's like middle of the pack, so they get a massive benefit from this game. And that's why I think these guys look a little underrepresented. You can get 20% of Amin Thompson, 15 to 20 of Van Vliet, 15 of Jalen Green, 15 of Brooks, 15 plus of Sengun. 3 of those guys are 3, 4, and 7. So Houston, to me, looks a lot like Atlanta for me. 2 situations against really good defenses that I think are getting overly penalized. So I like some of these Atlanta contrarian plays, and I like some of these Houston contrarian plays. But for Houston, if Sengun is in, I rank it Sengun, Amin Thompson, Fred Van Vliet, Jalen Green, and Dillon Brooks. Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore is a coin flip at that point. And honestly, I think you can roster Steven Adams today if you need to. S&P, interesting. I'll take a look at that. But he has been, let's see, is it trending down? Is his usage trending down? S&P says Sengun's points prop has consistently been multiple points lower than his baseline points projection. Has his usage been trending down? I am a little high on the usage right now. Interesting. It has been trending down quite a bit. You can see here. So he was relatively flat this whole stretch. It started to peak at the beginning of January. And now it has been coming down again off of that peak on this rolling average. Rolling average was in that 28 range. Rolling average now back down to that 24, 25 range. Is that the expense of Amin Thompson? A little bit. He has been ramping up a little bit now, getting up into that 20 range. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of tweaks there. Do I think Jalen Green is improving this year? Barely. Not enough. Not enough, that's for sure. I'm going to make a small tweak to Sengun's usage rate. and Amin Thompson's usage rate. We'll see how that plays out later on. But either way, I'm still going to like Şengün more than the 7% he's owned. That's for sure. I like Houston a lot. They're getting underrepresented in the ownership. I have them 93% optimal, 60% owned. That's my team today. Memphis just looks normal. Oddly enough, this is going to be really crazy to hear for everybody. There aren't any questionable players for Memphis. Points prop is 18.5, slightly juiced to the under. What do I have? All right, I got 19.9. I can handle that. Memphis, no Q tags. Edey's available, and then it's just no Marcus Smart, no Vince Williams. We're getting 10% ownership to Desmond Bane. That's about where I have it, 7,700, shooting guard only. We're getting about 25% ownership to Jaren Jackson. He does look very clearly like your best Memphis option. I actually have Triple J 5th overall on today's slate. 20% optimal, 40% boom score. Looking to hit 43.5 fantasy points. I think he completely deserves 27% ownership. Clearly the best Memphis Grizzly. Oh, sorry, guys. Appreciate you, Trey. Ja, 2% owned, 8,900. He's underowned. I think Ja and Trey look very similar today. Both under-owned options at point guard. And then you're getting about 10% ownership to like Jalen Wells, Santi Aldama, and Brandon Clark. They all look fine. They're all 10%ers. Scary dudes to roster. You never know who's going to get the minutes. Pretty clearly, though, Triple J 1, Desmond Bane 2, Ja Morant 3. He 48.5 out of Morant today, man. Has it been going great for him lately? No, it hasn't. 48.5, reasonable today? It is. He had 47.3 3 games ago. 47.8 on the 15th. So 2 out of the last 5 games he's played, he's been like basically right on my target score. That's what we're looking for today. Strikes me as the type of game he could play a little bit more. He had 43.5 in 37 minutes against Houston 2 weeks ago. That's kind of interesting to know that he did get up to real playing time against Houston in that one. But I think Triple J is the star here. The fact that you could put him in at power forward is massive. 7,800 is not crazy. He's a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy. And maybe we get lucky and Şengün's not in. And then you get Steven Adams and Jeff Green and very little else of quality. So I'm ranking Memphis: Jackson, Bane, Morant, Wells, Clark, Aldama. Don't think you can get to Zach Edey right now at 4,700. Folks, final game. This one's not a very good one. It's the lowest owned game of the day. It's the lowest pace of the day. It's the lowest total of the day. Orlando Magic, 5.5 point favorites in Portland, 212 total. For Orlando, Gary Harris is probable. Jalen Suggs is questionable. The Jalen Suggs ownership will be, or like his status will matter, but honestly, probably not that much. 10% ownership to Paolo, 10% ownership to KCP, 15 to Franz Wagner. Basically nothing to the rest of this team. I completely agree with it. I just happen to think it's kind of light. I've got Paolo Banchero, 21% optimal, 45% boom of 47 fantasy points. He's 8% owned, massively under owned. Look, I get it. Slow game, pace down spot for the Magic, but it's Portland on the opposite side. Paolo's points props 23.5. I got 24. Paolo Banchero might be the most under-owned team of the day, or under-owned player of the day. 21% optimal to 8% ownership. I think he should be like 25 to 30% owned. He's single digits. I want all of the Paolo here against Portland. All of it. Give me everything. I think KCP is under-owned at 10%. Now maybe Gary Harris lets KCP come back down to like 30 minutes. He's a terrible per minute guy. 3,900 shooting guard only allows me to pay up a little bit more elsewhere. A matchup against the Portland Trailblazers? Yeah. Give me KCP. And then give me Franz. I don't think he looks as good as Paolo. I don't think there's as much minutes upside. He's pulling a little bit more ownership as well. But I had him 18% optimal, 34% chance of 43.5 fantasy points. I want Franz as well. And I might even be a little light on Franz. I could probably give him another minute. But I want Paolo, I want Franz for sure. Both underowned. Paolo, massively underowned. I don't think you could do Wendell Carter Jr. or Goga right now. These guys are splitting the center minutes. I went 26-22 to Wendell Carter Jr. I think you got to leave those guys alone for right now. Paolo, yeah, he's the sneak dude. I mean, where do I have him ranked? I got Paolo as the number 2 play of the day behind Jordan Poole. Nobody's on that island with me today. You guys should join me for it. Franz is not far behind. Did he make the top 10? Yeah, Franz is 9th. Paolo 2nd, Franz 9th. 2 top 10 plays here for Orlando, and neither one of them is more than 14% owned. What's not to like here? I'm confident you guys are in here with me on this one. And then we get to the final team, Portland Trailblazers. Jeremy Grant, questionable. Obviously, that's going to matter. These guys are currently unowned. Single digits across the board. I think $6,400 point guard, shooting guard Anthony Simons should be much more owned than 7%. I got him 18% optimal, 36% boom. I've got Anthony Simons, the number 7 play overall. Yes, it's a bad defensive matchup. Yes, it's a pace down spot. But Simons will be my priority from Portland. I'll be way over the field. Kamara at 3% owned. Under-owned. Playing 34 minutes a night. Shooting guard, small forward eligible. 5,500. Should be 15 to 20% owned. He's 3. Love these late night pivots. Denny, under-owned at 6%. One of Shaden Sharp or Scoot, probably under-owned. Neither one of them is owned. Ayton at 6,600. Under-owned at 2% for sure. Now, if Jeremy Grant's out, you probably get a little bit more Delano Banton. He'll be back into the rotation. One of Scoot or Sharp likely start in that particular spot. They look better. There's a lot to like here. There is a lot to like here. I think this game is massively underrepresented. Think about this. I've got 75% optimal on Orlando. They're half that in ownership. I've got 70% optimal to Portland. They're a third of that right now. So I think that I'm going to be perfectly set up to have way more of Orlando and Portland than the rest of the field. And that is going to help me greatly as we get to 7:30 swaps, 9 o'clock swaps, 9:30 swaps, and then get to Orlando, Portland. I think that's the angle for today. Extra Orlando, Portland to adjust for news as it comes in for late swaps. Ownership pivots to Atlanta and Houston to get away from some of the potential chalk. I just saw somebody ask for it. I think we can pull this off right now. I do want to add a button quickly to my screen. So give me 1 second. We want source visibility. Browse. Perfect. Let's build a lineup. I could build one before we get out of here. Let's do it. Large contest. 35% to first. Let's find the value. I think Jared Allen is going in. I think LeBron James is going in. I think Mike Conley is going in. I think Max Strus is going in at shooting guard. I think Jaden McDaniels is going in at small forward. Guard forward utility. Decent enough amount of salary here. Let's get Jordan Poole. Let's get Jalen Wells. And then highest projected utility guy will be Jaren Jackson Jr. Spends the full salary, 263.33 projection, 211 ownership. How'd we do on lineup number 1? Not bad. Not bad at all, man. 50% on first draft. Let's see if we can do a little bit better than that. Let's play it a little different. Let's build around stars and scrubs to start. I feel like LeBron has to be there, but 63% ownership is a pretty sizable number. So let's see if we can build this out and get a pivot off of LeBron James, shall we? Which means the best value option pay-ups. Let's take a look at Alperen Şengün. Let's take a look at Austin Reeves. See if we can get Brandon Clark in for value, which is probably not going to be the value we're looking for. Here, I think that we could add Ty Jerome. This feels like a good spot to grab KCP. We're going to have a lot of salary left over, which I'm not mad about. DeAndre Hunter, great value at small forward, very little ownership. I think we have to go back to Triple J here since we're ignoring LeBron. That leaves us 6,900 for a forward, which can be Alex Sarr is the best option. Kuzma is the better ownership option. We can grab, if we grab Sarr, we have 1,300 left on the table. That'll actually let us upgrade Brandon Clark to Max Strus or Jackson Hayes. Let's try Jackson Hayes. So that's 256.6. So we actually went down 7 fantasy points, but we also went down 60 ownership points. Let's see if we gave up too many fantasy points to get back the ownership. We might have. We have plenty of places we could upgrade if we did. Ooh! Ooh! Oh, it's so pretty. Guys, it's so pretty. And I think we could probably even make a small move to make this look even better. We can probably swap Şengün and KCP and make this lineup look better. Because KCP's the best, one of the best values here, but not necessarily the best projection. What we might be able to do is go to Anthony Simons. And then at 6,600 for center, we could get Jared Allen. How much better does that look? I think this is going to be an upgrade to this lineup. Give me 87.4. Oh, I underestimated how amazing I am at life and lineup building. The Czar is back, baby. Nobody does it better. 112.1. We are ending it on that note. Reeves, Simons, Hunter, Jackson, Allen, Jerome, Sarr, and Hayes. Whew. No one better. No one better on the planet. Hit the like button for the final lineup build. Too damn good, everybody. Too damn good. Single lineup sim in the books. 5-game slate in the books. Lots of news to wait for tonight. It is going to be an awesome slate. You do not want to miss it. Contenders video will be out shortly. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We close out the week tomorrow. The final day of January. Man, we had a lot of people in here today letting me know that they don't know where to get their injury news. Slim got it. We'll add your name to the list of the other 15 people that did it too. Damn. What a hell. That's a hell of a lineup build, baby. What a gem. What a gem. Good luck, everybody. I'll talk to you guys later.